the media industry. It was really quite a bizarre name. And I looked at it, and I just had this deep sense that we should send them a letter. And so I told the investment banker to please send them a letter, and he said no. And we got into an argument because he said, look, you gave me a criteria. They don't fit the criteria for more than one reason. And, I'm not getting paid here unless we sell this business. And I don't want to, continue to go down a road where I'm doing a lot of work that is beyond what we've agreed to. And at the end, I felt so strongly about it and had such an intuitive sense that he agreed and sent the letter. And, of course, that's the company that ended up buying my company. And so, how invaluable was that I followed my intuition there? I'd also like to share with you just a few examples of how intuition can be powerful in the area of hiring. I know that this is an important area for people who are in the business of anything, and especially if you're in the recruiting industry, interviewing people for a living, it could be extremely important. And so for me, I have extraordinary results that I can track in terms of my hiring. I remember I was hiring somebody back in probably the year 2000, and there was a guy who had all of the right reasons to hire him on paper and all of the right reasons to hire him in terms of our interview and his interview skills. He was personable. He was selling me on hiring him, which to me is something at the time that I thought was important. He kept following up with me, and he was a really nice guy. I liked him a lot, and it just seemed like everything, when I weighed it out with my logical mind, said hire him. And his expectation of salary was even lower than what I had available to pay. Just everything was quite right with the guy. And so I hired him. And I will say in retrospect that there was a part of me at a gut level that got, no, don't hire him. And yet, at the time, I was overwhelmed by the logical side of things. And, in a few minutes I'm going to go through all of the things that can get in the way of our guidance, or at least I'm going to give you a little taste of that. And all of these same things that I went over with you earlier, the typical ways that we make decisions, are also the things that can get in the way of our guidance if we fixate on them as being primarily important. And I clearly had fixated upon the traditional kind of Franklin chart where you weigh out somebody's pros and cons. And there were all pros and very little cons, and everything seemed from that perspective to be a go. And I went with that, and it was a mistake, and I'll tell you how it was a mistake in a moment. There was another guy that I hired at a similar time period, and this guy, what happened was he was overqualified for the job. He had been in a sales job prior to this where he'd been making a tremendous amount of money and was very successful at it. And because of the shift in the economy, he'd lost his job, not for any reason around his performance. He was an older gentleman, so he had a family and a mortgage and a lot of responsibility. And he needed double the base salary as to what I had available to pay at that time. And so it was completely outside of my my parameters and my logic and my reasoning and everything to hire this guy. However, in this particular situation, I was very tuned in with my intuition. And my intuition was very strong to hire him. to do whatever it took to hire him, to borrow money, to move money from one place to another place, to cut my salary, anything that I could do to hire him. And, on paper, while he was quite successful at his previous job, there were actually some parts of what he'd been doing and of his personality and character that had me wondering whether he would be good at the job that I was actually interviewing him for. So I had some suspicions from my logical mind, but my intuitiveness was 100% go. And so I trusted it, and I hired him. And what happened with these two gentlemen is an incredible story for me in terms of validating my inner guidance, because the first gentleman that I hired, the one that I really had a gut feeling not to hire, but yet I did, and ended up that, and by the way, this stuff applies to firing as well, because soon after I hired the first guy, within a month or two, I knew deep inside me that it was time to fire him, that he was not doing what I needed him to do, and that in fact he was sometimes saying things to people that could be detrimental to our business and to our reputation. And yet, I did not fire him. Why didn't I fire him? Because of my emotions, because I didn't want to cause him pain, because I wanted to believe that he could change, because it was just easier to keep him on than to fire him and go through the interview process and find and train somebody else. A lot of reasons, all of which ran right in the face of what I call the truth, because the truth was to fire him, and I knew that deep inside. And so I kept him on, and kept him on for a long time, and maybe a year and a half into him working with me, it happened. He said something to a client that wasn't true, that got back to a billboard company that was one of our primary vendors, essential to our business. That billboard company was livid, came to my office and said, we will no longer do business with you. And that should have been the death knell of my company, because a large chunk of our business was with them, and really our ability to do business for our clients was dependent on our ability to purchase billboards from the big billboard vendors, and this was one of the biggest. And so I fired him, which at that point was easy. What happened next was another testament to intuition and inner guidance, because my employees wanted to implement these strategies to continue to do business with this billboard company in a surreptitious way so that they wouldn't know it was us. And I said no to that, and I followed my intuition, which told me what to do. I won't get into the details of that strategy, but I had a strategy. None of them really believed that my strategy was the right strategy, but my intuition said it was, and they were all loyal to me and trusted me even though they didn't believe it, and they stayed, and the strategy worked. It's just countlessly, over and over again, inner guidance has saved me, has brought in clients, has made my customers happy, has saved us money, has put us on the right track. The guy that I hired that I couldn't afford, and that I really had to shift some things around to hire him, well, something I never could have predicted with my logical mind. And this is the thing about intuition and inner guidance, is that you never know when you follow it what it actually might do for you. Right? So you never get to know where it's taking you or why it's taking you. I mean, sometimes you get to know, but many times you don't. And what happened with this particular guy is that it ends up that when I sold my business, part of why I was able to sell it was because of this guy. Because he had developed from what I hired him for, which was a salesperson, into my general manager. And he was actually running the business. And at the time that I sold it,